Okay.
Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Bruce Woodhead, former member of the States of Alderney. Today we are going to take a look at Bruce's time in Alderney politics and the facts regarding his resignation and his lack of trust in the Code of Conduct procedures. As ever, good to see you.
Good morning, Tony.
Good. What attracted you to local government in the first place?
I think I've always been attracted by politics in a general sense, and being on a small island, following local politics was an essential thing to do
Yeah.
in general discussion with the people that I knew.
Okay.
So I was interested. The reason I stood was I was interested, and I realized there were going to be very few candidates standing at the time, and
Mhm.
so I put myself forward. Praying that there would be enough for an election and I wouldn't have to necessarily serve. But there we go.
It was at an all-time low at that point, wasn't it, in terms of not being
It
able to
was.
recruit people to stand. But there we are. Now, one thing that fascinates a whole load of people, including myself, is the way in which members forsake their manifestos and become part of the quote establishment unquote. Um, does somebody actually operate a stun gun after you've been elected or after you've gained access to the chain? Because there is a theory that that happens.
I think it's quite simple, really. People put themselves forward in with full of good intentions and have seen some of the problems that have been created and some of the mess, and they are quite right in saying, "I'm coming in and I am going to do this and I am going to do that." Usually, manifestos are all pretty much the same: connectivity, housing, etc., etc. But one of the great things about being in government is that you know what's going on.
Mm.
And that's one of the attractions of being inside the operation. And as soon as people come in, they realize that it is not something that they can do. They can put forward their ideas from their manifesto, and they've been very strong on a certain area, so they will end up on a committee relating to that. But no individual can walk in and say, "I am going to do that."
Yeah.
It didn't work.
It's the problem of consensus government, isn't it, basically? But do you find, or did you find, that existing members briefed you, civil servants, or did the president brief you as to how to conduct yourself and what to put forward?
Um, when as you say, it was an all-time low. When I became a member, nobody briefed me on anything.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, we were due to be briefed by the then CEO, but she left. We were briefed by nobody. We wandered in and picked up what was going on. The president does brief you on matters relating to um, codes of conduct and so forth and such like. And obviously, we had to be sworn in.
Mm.
But as far as the rest of it is concerned, uh, fortunately, Mr. Leisure, Theo Leisure, did put together a very good package
Yeah.
for the introduction of new members.
Why do the new members seem to end up as the heads of the various committees?
Well, I think actually it's a matter of the right person for the job. Um, None of us are necessarily trained to be politicians, but we
Mm.
all have training in other areas. And so, while it seems a strange idea that somebody should go straight in as chairman of general services, if they've got a good background in building and a good background in the knowledge of the island, as the current chairman has, um, then the civil service are there to back them up and to give them all the necessary help regarding running as chairman. And so it's often just horses for courses.
Yeah, but what about the other eight? Why
Well,
can't they do it? They've had X years experience. You'd have thought that they would have taken up the cudgel.
um, they may not want to. I mean, there are certainly people who don't want to become chairman. I didn't particularly want to become chairman of any of the committees. I preferred to sit on a
Mm,
larger number of committees. It's quite a demanding job.
mm.
Um, I think it's take the 8 people that we've got there, not 10 at the moment, and out of the 8 people, probably the right people are in the position. I mean, first of all, Mr. Abel is chairman of PNF, and he's been chairman of PNF before. He's got his deputy in Mr. Hill. That's fine. General services, again, I can't think anybody else wanted that particular chalice. And the other 2 committees are fine. I mean, Mr. Gentle has been chairman of the Planning Development Committee before, and he's there. And I think that Mr. Clark will be an excellent chairman of economic development, which had completely lost its way, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. But there we go. Right, okay, so we're still faced with the problem, though, Bruce, that everyone sits on the Policy and Finance Committee, bar one, Alex Snowden. He's decided he doesn't want to sit on it because he wants to be in a position to provide scrutiny. Isn't it a fact, Bruce, that essentially all the business is done in that committee and the actual public meetings are just a bit of window dressing?
It does seem like that, doesn't it? We did open up policy and finance to the public and invited the public to come to the meeting, not join in the meeting, but to come to the meetings, which was it was a gesture, and it was very unsuccessful because, I mean, it's a boring thing to do to go and sit through at one of those committee meetings. A committee will produce whatever it's doing, and if it has got something that needs to go to the States, it will have been debated maybe within that committee. It'll then go to policy and finance and is debated by everybody to go on to the billet. Now, the debate is more to go on the billet or not. I mean, should we put this on the billet? Yes, it goes on the billet. There is very little debate in the chamber with many of the things.
Yeah.
You've seen things happen in the chamber over the just past few months.
Yeah.
Which shouldn't have done.
Yeah. But you see, I suppose the answer is that you can't even trust the people on the committee, because if you take the vote for government reform, which was going to reduce the numbers from 10 to 8, I think you all agreed tacitly to the idea in committee. I may be wrong, but when it came to the crunch, there were major defections.
We knew that Mrs. Morris had always been against that change, so we knew there was one person who would not vote for it, and she's totally honest. She'd been totally honest about that. We were very surprised that the other 3 decided to vote against it. 2 of them without any particular reason, and the other one gave some fairly spurious statistical facts. So it was a very strange situation, and those who voted for it were extremely disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sort of give you public confidence, does it, when you see something like that happen?
No. And not at all. Not at all.
Right, let's get on to the subject of CEOs. There's only been one, David Jeremiah, that did the full course, i.e. 5 years. Meantime, there's been a whole load that have dropped by the wayside. Why? What is it that the members of the States of Alderney do to these people to make them want to go?
Jeremiah was the last of the chief clerks, I think.
No, he was the first of the CEOs.
Oh, he was first of CEOs, was he?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Why? 2 reasons. One, I think you touched later on. I think that the selection process has been completely wrong until this last time, and that we've looked for CEOs, and the understanding of a CEO externally in the UK is different from the understanding of a CEO here. So I think there were some bad appointments that made it difficult for those people who were appointed, as well as the states themselves. You asked a very difficult question. I know one temporary CEO spoke to another CEO, and his question was, how long did it take for one of the members to try to get rid of you?
Yeah.
Um, and I think the answer was 2 weeks. There is an element of, if you like, let's be very kind about this. There is an element of within the states of wanting to test.
But, they have decided to appoint somebody.
Well, again, you're looking at the collective. I mean, the states had decided to appoint somebody, but it's a majority decision. I think that was the method of appointing is quite well scrutinized and quite well done, but should not be done by us, of course.
Well, they don't have any background in human resources, do they?
Absolutely
Yeah,
correct. And so
yeah,
they shouldn't be making decisions relating to human resource situations. That's a professional job. That goes for appointment of senior people and the removing of senior people. I mean, it's
yeah.
nonsense.
And so we have a situation here where if they advertise yet again, surely people are going to quickly do a Google and say, "Gosh, haven't got a very good rate of keeping these people on board. Why would I bother?"
I agree with you entirely. I haven't seen any sign that they are trying to recruit anybody else. Certainly, Mrs. Liz Morris
Yeah,
has done a very good caretaker's job in the past 18 months before or previously,
yeah.
and back again doing the caretaker job. But she makes it very plain, and it is very plain. She is not CEO to change things, to turn them around,
Yeah.
as Mr. Leisure was. She is there as a caretaker CEO.
And she is, of course, a Guernsey civil servant.
Indeed.
So, I mean, there's a bit of a conflict there, isn't there?
Um, I, I
I
don't.
mean,
I have
I like Liz very, very much, and
no, no, no. She's
I
great.
was
She's very
she's
good.
really good. But
Yeah,
I'm just saying, from a constitutional point of view, when you
difficult
have
one.
a Guernsey civil servant as the chief executive of the Alderney States.
Yes. Well, actually, she yes. As she represents Guernsey as treasurer.
Mm.
She represents us as CEO.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah, let's put it like that.
Okay. Now, two major resignations, states members, and two resignations, civil servants. Can we start off with looking at the circumstances that led up to Nigel Voot's resignation? What happened there?
That Nigel's resignation letter says quite a lot about what happened. There was maybe a misunderstanding that grew into something a bit. It's very difficult. Mr. Voot had quite a number of problems, and he, as far as I can see, it's really peaked when he was trying to put, as you say, on the 27th of November, we had agreed that we should put before the states the amendment for code of conduct.
Mm, yeah,
And it was he then had a great deal. I am told he had a great deal of problems with the president because the president did not want it to go on the agenda for, as far as I can gather, no particular reason. But has to be. I have to say this is hearsay because Mr. Voot has confirmed that this was the case. That the president, and it really, really upset him, that the president was sort of pushing against something that the committee wanted,
mm,
and he felt that this was not really on. And that was combined with a code of conduct that was hovering, where the president was appointing people who Mr. Voot knew were not his closest friends. In other words, they were people who he felt would have a biased opinion about anything relating to him. And I think it was a combination of these things, but something you must have Mr. Voot on here and ask him.
yeah, if I can. Okay, so we've got the reasons. We have this infamous press release that seems to have been another trigger?
This, of course, was the basic problem that the president had with the whole situation here. Mr. Voot resigned Friday or Saturday, one or the other. I can't remember when it was. And the sort of very evening that he resigned, it was announced in the Blonde Hedgehog that he had resigned by certain people, and so it was in the general public domain. The press had picked up on this because they get notified immediately. There are people who are continually in contact with the press. So they already knew by Saturday that Nigel Voot had resigned, and this was coming out. It came out on the BBC and so forth and such like. A press release, therefore, was put together by Mr. Forrest and Mr. Leisure with help from Nigel, I presume, because he allowed his resignation letter to go into that press release. And I think that they believed quite rightly that this was the right thing to do. Mr. Leisure had been responsible for releasing press releases previously. He took the attitude, he was CEO, that this was the normal and the correct thing to do. It's a public body. Publishing the resignation letter is a standard thing to do, maybe not business, but it is in a public body. So he saw nothing wrong with that. He perhaps, yes, I mean, that press release caused a massive problem.
With whom, Bruce? With whom?
With the president.
Right, okay.
I mean, a real problem for him.
And you think that, was very much led to these other situations arising.
Yeah.
The CEO was sacked, essentially.
Yep.
Described as the most progressive one we've ever had.
Absolutely.
I mean, I just don't understand that, Bruce. I really don't.
Some people will tell you that's just Alderney. I can't really understand it. I can understand what happened, and your comment about HR and professionalism is so correct as far as that committee meeting that sacked him was concerned. There was no professionalism as far as that was concerned. The assessment, of which there were 4 assessments every quarter, were all positive.
Yeah.
The final assessment was drawn up by the chairman and the vice chairman of PNF, and it was a positive one. It was on the table at that meeting. However, the press release had incensed the president, obviously, and the chairman of the meeting, instead of being Mr. Voot, who had resigned, was in fact Mr. Carter, who had his issues with Mr. Leisure. I think that I was stunned when I walked into the meeting to see a lawyer sitting there. And I was even more stunned when the questions to her were based on what if we were to release him now, what would be the financial implications, etc. She answered that, or quite honestly, the contract was a contract, there would be no financial implication. And that seemed to hold a very big stead, because if there was going to be a problem in the future, which it looked like there might be, according to some people, then that would be very expensive. So that was a ridiculous point.
So who appointed the lawyer?
I'm almost 100% certain that the chairman of the committee requested the presence of the
Mr. Carter.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
The lawyer made one thing very plain, and in lawyer terms, she said, if you do go down this course, then there is no reason why you shouldn't notify Mr. Leisure immediately. You do not have to wait for the Lieutenant Governor's approval, because that is tantamount to being automatic once this committee has made its decision, and therefore you have no reason at all why you shouldn't notify. And in lawyer terms, that was a suggestion that you should do.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Mr. Carter chose at the end of the meeting, at which the president, and this is where my code of conduct came in, the president had given a very venomous dressing down of the situation. It was horrific. I had hoped that by doing a CFC on the president, that it would have come out, that the minutes of the meeting would come out, and hopefully the recording of the minute of the meeting, if there is one in place, and I'm sure there is. But again, the unprofessionalism of it, at the end of the meeting, when the meeting had voted and he was out, i.e. Mr. Leisure was not going to get his contract confirmed, the chairman then turned around and said, well, this is now a totally confidential matter, and I will be writing, after I have spoken to the lawyers, I will be writing to Mr. Leisure. How on earth was that going to be confidential? I actually had a meeting that evening with Nigel, I should say Mr. Voot, and we were actually going to have supper together because he was leaving for Christmas.
Yeah.
And the first question he asked was, what happened at the meeting? Yeah. And I looked him straight in the eye. I said, Nigel, it's confidential. It's absolutely confidential. Can we not talk about it anymore? Yeah. And he laughed. He laughed like a drain. He said, if it's confidential, you've sacked him.
Yeah.
And then Nigel, of course, had no reason. I mean, he was he worked well with Mr. Leisure, and Nigel. I'm afraid Nigel had no reason why he shouldn't talk about it, and he did. And then it came back on me. If you're looking at why I resigned, it came back on me, and there was a meeting, and when I explained the situation, and I could see that some of my colleagues were really not believing what I was saying, and then I had a meeting with the president and Mr. Carter, who were very, very strong to say, we're not asking you to resign or anything like that, but we have to tell you that your colleagues will have no confidence in you and your confidentiality in the future. And so I was going nowhere else. Therefore I was going to resign, which I'm very sad about.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Quite like to stay on.
So, the full details of your code of conduct complaint are?
It's very simple, that the president, who was a guest at the meeting, well, he's entitled to go to any meeting, but he's a guest in as much that the chairman has to invite him to speak.
Yeah.
If he say something. He then talked for 10 minutes, I don't know exactly how long, and he gave a diatribe of what he felt about Mr. Leisure and his performance in letting this press release go out, even though the press knew about it. And the press release, it went out. It should not have had the resignation letter. It should not have mentioned him. It shouldn't have done all sorts of things. Mr. Leisure shouldn't have made comment in the letter, which I probably tend to agree with. But he did it with such venom that one wondered what was going on, because it was horrific. And he was influencing everybody in the committee room. And when he'd finished and one or two questions had been asked, I looked at him and I said, did you have a good relationship with Mr. Leisure prior to this weekend? And he looked at me and said, no, I didn't. And then realized, maybe that wasn't the sensible thing to say. But it went on then to start talking about previous things that had all been dealt with. other people were chirping in with, well, there are. I mean, somebody said, there are one or two staff who aren't very happy, and Mr. Leisure was changing the civil service to make it into a really good,
Yeah.
supportive system to the members.
Yeah.
And so, of course, there were people who were going to be a little bit unhappy at times.
Yeah.
It was a kangaroo court.
So you put in this code of complaint. That goes
Yep.
before whom?
Well, this was very interesting because I knew it went before the president. So I put in a complaint to the lieutenant governor,
Yeah. Okay.
and His Excellency wrote back through his office to say that he noted, but really the procedure was for a code of conduct. I think I wrote back to him and I said, I like the idea of putting a code of conduct in on the president against the president. I think I'll just write to the president and tell him what I think. And I have to say that on reflection, I mean, the office rang me and said, look, we understand what you're saying, but if you should ignore the process. Just if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Put a code of conduct. So I put a code of conduct in, knowing exactly what was going to happen. The president couldn't deal with it. He wasn't there. He was away. That was immaterial. He wouldn't be allowed to deal with it anyway because it was on him. His deputy, his vice president, also being in the meeting, was conflicted, so he couldn't deal with it. And what it's demonstrated is there's nowhere else for it to go. The vice president has actually dealt with it, and he has come back and said that he wasn't substantiated, etc., etc. I mean, I ought to put a code of conduct on him for even answering, because he was not entitled to answer. He was conflicted. And I have pointed this out to the president, and I've had no response. The president said the procedure has been followed, which is exactly my point. The procedure has been followed, and it's not good for purpose.
No, okay. Because we see a situation here where presumably it went before a committee, a panel of lay people. Is that right?
Well, they
Or
are.
did the vice president just chuck it out without reference to anybody else?
He did.
Okay.
The system, as I understand it, is that there are 6 people who the president recommends, but they have to be approved by the states, basically, as being people who are competent, and they are good, solid citizens.
Yeah.
And then 3 of them are chosen to hear a hearing. If the president feels that it's worthy.
Yeah, but it didn't get to that stage on this
No,
occasion.
it didn't get to that stage. No.
Okay, and obviously you want to really see somebody that was going to be totally independent dealing with these matters, and I believe you almost, the States of Alderney, almost appointed Dr. Melissa McCulloch back in November, end of November, but it never materialised. Now this lady, I believe, deals with Northern Ireland and other places, in terms of appeals procedures and code of conduct. It was a golden opportunity missed. Why?
She deals with Northern Ireland, Jersey, Guernsey. I'm not sure about the Isle of Man, but possibly Isle of Man as well. She's the perfect answer. She's external. She's professional. She is the person that all of us on the 27th of November voted to put on the state's agenda, that she should be appointed. As we know, to appoint somebody, to change the law, which this entails changing the law, you have to have a minimum of 9 present in the chamber.
Okay.
And you have to have a majority of 7 to get through. Nigel and Mr. Voot had resigned. And consequently, we were going to be 9 in the chamber, which was just good enough. And then, unfortunately, Mr.
Snowden,
Snowden
yeah.
was reported to be ill and couldn't attend, and therefore we didn't have a quorum,
Mm.
and therefore it had to be removed from the agenda.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess even if it had gone through it, by the time you sorted the legislation out, the history would have overtaken the whole thing, wouldn't it? In terms of your specific complaint.
Oh yes,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, my complaint was could never go anywhere
No.
because of the current system.
It seems to me that recent adjudications are not in line with the severity of the complaints at all.
I think this is one of the problems that uh, there is no sense of balance for misdemeanors. I mean, we have to be very careful because you and I aren't in the committee. We don't know what facts and figures they've been
Mm.
presented with,
Yeah.
so we can't make a judgment outside of the committee. But your comment is, sometimes it appears that it's not quite the right result for certain accusations.
Do you think in these circumstances the Ministry of Justice should be informed?
Strangely enough, I think the Ministry of Justice have taken an interest in this. They may not be interested in our runway, etc., but here you have a process protocol, and that's the sort of thing that they are interested in.
Mm.
And I am told that they have put their head above the parapet and blinked at this one, and that whether they get involved or take it any further, I know they have meetings with the president from time to time. What happens, I don't know. But most important of all is that the thing goes forward and goes back onto the billet.
So we're back to the dark ages of secrecy.
Why do you say that?
I got that quote from Alistair Forrest in his article. But up
Yes.
to a point, it's true, isn't it?
No, I hope not. Um, uh, yeah, I hope not. I mean, I know that President Tate wants to take a more political attitude. I hope
He
and
shouldn't,
pray.
though. He's supposed to be the Speaker of the House.
I know, I know, I know.
Yeah.
I totally disagree with his argument that because in an emergency he can sit on a committee and make a decision. I don't think that gives him the right to enter into politics, but he does. So therefore, he's there. It's up to him. I hope he doesn't try to take on the role of chief executive as well, because at the moment, as you were saying, it doesn't look like there's going to be anybody to replace Mr. Leisure anytime soon.
Mm, mm, mm. So your ideal solution basically is to follow the Dr. Melissa McCulloch path
Certainly, and no
for the
question.
future.
And I'm going to fight for that
Yeah.
right the way along. And that might, yeah, I mean, I just hope that when it does come, it will come back into the chamber.
Mm,
And I just hope that the 7 votes will be there.
mm.
There's always somebody in the chamber who wants to vote the other way.
Yeah.
But let's hope that it's only the one.
Yeah, and you have got a couple of fresh faces in now who seem to be fairly progressive ladies, so hopefully they'll take on board the fact that this is so necessary as
Yeah,
part of government. Yeah,
congratulations to them. Both of them, I think, are very good,
yeah,
and will add a lot to the current team. I think the current team has started off very well,
mm,
and I wish them well. And I as far as the going back to sort of secrecy and the dark ages is concerned. I mean, I hope people like Edward Hill have been shouting about transparency, and Stuart Clark's the same. Hopefully, they
they will
will
continue.
they will continue. Yes.
Bruce,
Yeah,
it's been a delight to talk to you about these matters, and thank you very much for coming on, Tony, at 12. Uh,
pleasure.
Perhaps in a few months' time, we'll have another look at things because, I think people find you a very interesting gentleman.
That's very kind of say.
All the best, Bruce. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, bye bye.